Is obesity a choice? Some of the latest science on genetics says it's not. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, it's Tony with Big T Bariatric and I'm back at you with another video. Today it is Monday, Memorial Day, May 29th. I hope you're having a wonderful day so far, and happy Memorial Day to all of my American friends out there. I know today is a day where we in America honor those who have fallen in battle. So just remember the reason for why you have the day off today. I know I certainly am. But today we're going to talk about genetics and whether or not it can predetermine whether someone is going to be obese or not. But before I get into this video, I just want to make a little note about Saturday's video on Fatspo. I think I made a huge mistake making that video, and I went back and forth about whether or not I should pull it. I talked to a few people, and they said I was clear on my messaging, but there was a few people who did not understand the point of my video. So I thought I would kind of clarify it a little bit. I did lose a handful of subs on it, but I gained more than I lost, so I'm not too upset about it. But I think I did make a mistake in that video. When I was trying to talk about Fatspo, I was not trying to talk about the pro-Ana community. I know nothing about that community. I know nothing about anorexia. I don't know about that type of eating disorder or anything like that. So other than reading what the Urban Dictionary definition was, I did not mention that community once in my entire video. And the reason is because I wasn't trying to reference the legitimate uses of Fatspo within that community. That's not what I was trying to talk about at all. I was trying to talk about how the fat acceptance movement sort of hijacked Fatspo, and that's why I put Fatspo in quotes in both my thumbnail and in the title of my video, because I was talking about how they are often hijacking Fatspo to incorporate anybody who lives in a caloric deficit, including myself. I'm not anorexic, all right? I live in a caloric deficit. I'm trying to lose weight. So anybody who diets, exercises, tries to live in a caloric deficit to lose weight, how they are calling that Fatspo, and in an effort to shut down any sort of criticism whatsoever that they receive. So that's what my video was about. But every once in a while, I put out a video where I wasn't clear about something, so I'm taking full responsibility for that. I apologize if I offended you. I did trigger some people by talking about that issue, because there are legitimate circumstances of Fatspo out there. Again, I did not mention that community once in my entire video except for reading the definition of it. So that's what I was not talking about. But I probably should have been more wary that that sort of thing exists out there, and I might have offended some people just by talking about it. So again, I'm sorry to those people that I offended. That was not my intention. Because I have ADHD and I do not script my videos, what you see is what you get. It comes to my mind right away. I do my best to research whatever topic I'm going to talk about, and what comes out is what comes out. And so because I have ADHD, sometimes I'm not as clear on what I want to talk about. And so going back and watching that video, I realized I was not so clear. A lot of people said, Big T, you were clear. I knew what you were talking about. I get it, but some people didn't get it. So to those of you who I offended, I'm sorry. That's what I was trying to talk about, and it came across the wrong way. But today we're going to do something different. I found this video, and it's from a channel called The Royal Institution. I'm wondering if this is like a UK version of TED Talks. I don't know. In this video, we're going to watch Dr. Giles Yeo, Y-E-O, who is a geneticist with over 20 years of experience dedicated to researching the genetics of obesity. He obtained his PhD from the University of Cambridge and assisted the groundbreaking research that uncovered key pathways in how the brain controls food intake. So in some ways, he says that obesity cannot be controlled. So this is groundbreaking, up-to-date science that we're going to watch, and we're going to talk about it and discuss it. And see what this guy has to say about it. This is an hour-long video, so I'm probably going to break this up into two or three smaller videos, and ask the question to you guys, and maybe you can put down in the comments as I do this, because I know a lot of you answer questions or respond to certain things I say throughout my video. What do you think about genetics and obesity? Are some of us more likely to get it than other people? Is it a genetic component that's handed down. I never really thought so as much because I'm the only big person in my family. So obesity does not run in my family. And here I was almost 700 pounds. And I know doing more research and looking at it, obesity is something that's often passed down. If you have an obese parent, you are more likely to become obese. If you have two obese parents, that risk of becoming obese skyrockets. So is it something that's often passed down? Are there different characteristics behind obesity that's passed down? Are there certain genes that make you more likely to develop obesity? What do you guys think? Let me know down below.
Lecture, the 2019 Haldane lecture to all of you. And thank you all of you who I think you need to be questioning your life decisions while you're here on a Friday night. But that's okay. We'll deal with that. Maybe you'll be doing it less. But I am deeply honored. And I'm here to actually speak about obesity. And I'm posing the question, okay, which I do think it's relevant because of where we are today. But hopefully it's a provocative question. Is obesity a choice? In fact, I'm going to ask the question. There will be some audience participation tonight, so I'm going to warn people. How many people here think that obesity is a choice?
I mean, in most of my conversations, I often say it is a choice. You're there because you put yourself there. I wouldn't say there was any genetic thing within me that made me fat. I just ate an inordinate amount of food because I was coping with something. But did certain genes make me more susceptible to being overweight? But then my trauma sort of triggered that. And because I ate a lot more food to help me cope, that I became bigger. Whereas my sister went through the same trauma that I did pretty much. And she went towards other things. Food wasn't as big of a factor to her, so she never became overweight. So it's a very interesting question. I think most people would say if you're obese, you did that to yourself. But and obesity is not something that has been a huge thing throughout our history. It's only really been more relevant in the last few decades. So it's very difficult to really say for sure, but we're going to see what the latest science has to say about obesity.
Okay, this is good. This is good. Although it does look like a largely friendly audience. Why? But okay. So let me. I don't think it is. But let me give you. It's a caveated. I don't think it is. And hopefully at the end, I either have convinced you or I have not. I'm based at the University of Cambridge, and I work at the MRC Metabolic Diseases Unit. Now, I'm a geneticist by trade, by its very definition. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here with the Genetic Society blessing. And I think that's a perfectly upstanding thing to do. My mother-in-law still speaks to me. So this is all very, very, very good. But when people ask what disease I study, because people often use genetics in order to understand disease, because how best to understand how something works than when something doesn't work. And I say obesity, actually I say body weight, obesity being one end of the spectrum, immediately I become the bad person. And I become the bad person.
And that's very interesting because when you talk about disease, you often think about things that you cannot control within yourself. If you get some sort of disease within your body, you aren't usually in control of that. But most people would say, well, obesity then, therefore, is not a disease. And what he just said was very interesting, too, that, when he says what type of disease that he researches, and he talks about obesity or body weight, he instantly becomes the bad guy. Because for some reason, people just do not want to ever admit that obesity is a disease. They would rather it be something born of choice. So again, this is a very interesting conversation that hopefully science will continue to clear up as we get better at talking about nutrition and weight and stuff like that. And if I'm wrong about how I feel about obesity, having been super morbidly obese and still today an obese person, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to open up my mind to that. And I know some of you might not be willing to open your mind on that. You might just be adamant, just pounding the pavement like obesity is a choice. You did it to yourself. Blah, blah, blah. If that's your opinion on it, then that's fine. But I really hope you're still going to stick with this. You're going to watch it. I have no idea what the conclusion is going to be. He just says that he doesn't think that it's a choice. So I kind of got an idea where this is going to lead down towards. But hopefully everybody watching, including myself, is going to have an open mind and be willing to learn about obesity and how genetics might play a role in that.
Because I'm perceived as giving fat people, overweight people, people with obesity, none of the terms which I use in any pejorative sense whatsoever, and excuse, which philosophically to me has always been an interesting take, I think, on enough.
And I often get accused of that myself, like Big T, just showing any kind of sympathy to overweight people, you're giving them an excuse. Somebody said that I'm ass patting other fat people, being a fat person myself, and we're just kind of ass patting each other, saying congratulations on being fat. Like somebody's told me that before. I'm like, no, I'm very tough on one end. I show tough love. And I'm very, very honest about it because that's what science says about it, that obesity is going to lead to these diseases. So I am not shy when it comes to that, but I also sympathize with people who have been super morbidly obese because I know what it's like to get there. I know how helpless you feel. I know how easy it is to gain that amount of weight. And if you've never been that size, then you don't really understand that. Just like if you're anorexic, you don't really people don't understand why you don't like to eat. I mean, it's just something that we don't understand. But the vast majority of people would rather believe that somebody deserves no sympathy for being overweight whatsoever. But, you know, again, we're going to see what he has to say about that.
Now, because if I was studying the genetics of dementia, the genetics of rheumatoid arthritis, the genetics of cancer, would I suddenly be giving those people suffering from those particular diseases an excuse? I'd like to think not. I'd be trying to understand a pathway. I'd be trying to understand a mechanism. I'd be trying to fix a problem. But yet, you speak about body weight, and suddenly you're giving people an excuse. And I think a large part of it is down to this. Everyone has seen versions of this everywhere. This is the scales of justice. This is otherwise known, for those of you who've done GCSE physics, the first law of thermodynamics. Okay, so you can't magic calories from anywhere, and you can't magic the calories away. So you got to eat more than you burn in order to gain weight, and ergo the only way to lose weight is to burn more than you eat. Okay, so there we go. You guys are thinking, did he just say eat less and move more? Did I just pay money to hear that? And yes, you did, but it's true, and this is the thing. There is a huge but at the end, but it is true because it's physics, and we're not going to magically get past physics because it is physics.
I mean, so yeah, that's pretty much true. And what I've been saying, what other people have been saying who do channels like mine, it is the same. It is physics. It is the law of thermodynamics. You put in more energy into your body than you expend, then your body stores that energy. If you spend more energy doing activities and you don't eat as much energy, so your body expends more energy, you're going to lose weight. That's the law of physics. Like, that's not going to change. If you eat less and you exercise more, you're going to lose weight. That's how you lose weight. But he, like he said, there's a huge but at the end of this. There's more to it than that. That's true, but there's more to it than that.
The question, however, is not how we get to the body weight we are, which is going to be down to physics, because that's the only way we're going to be able to get the calories in and get the calories out. But it's why. Why do people behave differently around food? So let me give you a scenario. This is the boardroom scenario. Okay, so you're in a meeting on a Monday. It's 8 freaking a.m. in the morning. Okay, and so you're sat there, and suddenly someone slides a plate of cookies into the middle of the table. Okay, now I'm going to argue there are 4 different behaviors to this sliding plate of cookies. You know, there are going to be some people before the plate even stopped sliding. Okay, would have already reached for the cookie and had one. Okay, you know who you are. Okay, now. There's a second group of person, okay, who longs for the cookie, dreams of the cookie, but for whatever reason does not take the cookie. But the end point of this, dreaming and longing of the cookie, is they don't listen to the meeting, right? So the entire meeting is gone, and they've been thinking about the cookie the entire time. You know who you are, okay? So now then there's a third type of person, the most annoying. I want to argue, are the people who don't even know the cookie has arrived, okay? This guy comes in, they're going, what cookie? I didn't know there was a cookie. And then there's the fourth type of person in whom they eat the cookie without even knowing the cookie is there. John, did you like the cookie? What cookie, right? And now, And I think you know who you are too. Now, those four different behaviors, are they willpower?
It's very interesting. I laughed at the second one because I think I'm that type of person where I would long for it. I would see it there. I would long for it. I would want it, but I wouldn't grab it. One, because I would be sort of anxiety ridden about what people are going to think about me grabbing a cookie or people watching me grab a cookie. But then there's going to be that part of me that's like, I don't need that cookie. I mean, but it's there. It's right in front of my freaking face, and I can't think of anything else but that cookie, and I want it so bad. And so it's like, because, again, I have ADHD, I'm going to be focused on that cookie and not what the other person is talking about. So my attention is going to be on the thing that I want. And if everybody else grabs one, I might reach out and grab one. But more often than not, if it's there, I won't grab it because, again, I'm afraid of what people are going to perceive of me. And also, it's going to be running through my head, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, type of thing.
Is it down to moral fiber? Is it? No, because a large part of it, yes, okay, there's going to be social, there's going to be cultural norms, but this is a situation in which you're in the same office, you're sat around the same table, you're broadly of the same socioeconomic class, broadly, right? You're office workers, whatever, and you're actually doing what you're doing, and yet you behave so differently around food. And a large part of that is going to have a biological basis. And when you read biology, you're going to have to say genetics, and a large part of it is actually going to be...
Yeah, and that's a very good thing to discuss as well. Like, you can get a whole group of people around a table around food, and we're all going to act differently. We're all going to have a different idea of how we should react around that food. Some people are going to pile their plates high. Some people are going to peck at their food. Some people are going to go for the dessert first. Some people go right for the protein first. Like, we're all going to do it differently, and we all come from the same... everybody around the table might come from the same class, might be raised differently, but maybe even amongst your own family of everybody who was raised the same way, they're all going to act differently around the food. It's how much of that is biological? How much are we driven towards certain things? I mean, again, some people might have more dessert and more sugary stuff on their plate. Some people might have more protein. We might stay away from carbohydrates. We might add more carbohydrates. I mean, it's just, we all do it differently. We all have different biological behavior around food, and that's obvious.
Some genetic basis. So the question is not how we get to how we are, which is going to be down to physics, yes? Okay, and let's all accept that. But why do people eat more? What drives someone to eat more and therefore gain weight? Or what drives someone to not eat more and therefore be either average weight or skinny or what have you? And there we have my particular interest in in my field of study. Why are people different sizes in exactly the same food environment that we're actually currently living in at the moment? Now, we know that there's a huge problem with obesity at the moment, okay? I'm not going to harp on about this this particular figure because I think it's well rehearsed, you can barely turn on a television, to have a documentary made about it. I'm responsible for some of them, so I understand that. But only to say that...
I'm going to go back to that. I didn't pause it in time. A little graph. All right. In the United States, 1 in 3 adults is obese. And in Mexico, obesity rates have doubled since 1980. I actually saw a video, and I might react to it, of how there's a town, I believe it's in Mexico, it might have been in South America, where all they drink is Coca-Cola because they can't drink the water there, but Coca-Cola is everywhere. And so since Coca-Cola started, and they use like real cane sugar there, they don't use the corn syrup that's in our Coca-Cola. So since they started drinking that, they've been having all kinds of health issues. Obesity is skyrocketing. People are getting diabetes. Their teeth are rotting out. I mean, it's just nasty what's been happening in some of these places where the only product that they really get in from other countries is from us, and it's our diet. And you could really see how the westernized diet is spreading throughout the world. And even in some parts of Europe, just looking at this map right here, some aren't as bad. Like France, it looks like, has their own diet, which is not as bad as a Western diet. But then you get into England and Ireland and Scotland and the whole British Isles there, like, they're pretty bad. But you get into some parts of Africa, and they're as bad as the United States. The The Middle East, the change in diets to more sugar, oils, and animal products see obesity rates soar. So you would think a Mediterranean diet would be healthier, but you're starting to see obesity skyrocket even in those places. But Asia has the lowest rates of obesity, which I think is amazing as well. The lowest rate of obesity in the world at fewer than 1% adults is in Bangladesh. In the Cook Islands, the highest rates of male obesity in the world at 60.1%. So again, it's just, it's all... Western Europe, 35% of adults are insufficiently active. I wonder why that is. Maybe if you live in Western Europe, you can let me know why adults are insufficiently active there. I always thought Europe was fairly active. People riding their bikes and walking everywhere. But 507 million is the number of adults with a higher BMI than 30 worldwide in 2008. Which the number was 147 million in 1980. So, in just a few short decades, we went from 147 million to 507 million people with a BMI of higher than 30, which is very interesting. Let me get back here.
Entry made about it. I'm responsible for some of them, so I understand that. But only to say that while the fact that in Western Europe, in North America, what have you, that there is a serious problem with obesity, type 2 diabetes, and all of the other comorbidities, yes, very well rehearsed, we're actually nowhere near the maximum of the problem. Because of this tiny corner of the world over here, okay, the Asia, okay, so the Indian subcontinent and China, okay, where, fine, there's probably going to be, roughly speaking, 300 million mainland Chinese people with enough expendable income to go on holidays where you guys go on holidays, okay? And same number probably of South Asian Indians, okay? But you have to remember there are still 1 billion people, okay, stuck out in the sticks, both in India and in China, in where if you're actually poor, okay, there's not enough food and you're skinny, okay? It's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. Unlike clearly in the West, where lower socioeconomic class is actually linked to a greater risk of obesity.
I mean, and that's very interesting too, that if you are of a lower class in the West, here in the United States, you are more linked to obesity than a higher class. But if you live out in Asia, where there's poverty, you are more likely to not have enough food and be underweight. So that's an interesting disparity there. Why are people in the United States more likely to be obese if they're poor versus overseas? And I think a lot of them might have to do with processed foods and the availability and the cheapness of sugar. I'm sure they're not over there eating a lot of junk food in Asia, where people here, where the junk food is much cheaper. So if you're not able to afford the higher class foods, I guess you can say, that the middle and upper class of America eats, you're probably going to be eating a lot of ramen noodles and packaged foods and garbage like that, where they're not really eating that over there.
So while their governments are trying to drag their populations, out of poverty, or what word you want to use, suddenly they're going to be exposed to the same environment that we're being exposed to. When an additional 2 billion people in the world are suddenly exposed to this, we will begin to reach the maximum of the problem. And I'd like to think we could try and fix this before we actually get there.
Hopefully.
Now, the one thing about talking about genetics and about obesity is that people say, well, our genes haven't changed. What are you talking about? How can that be the case? And it's true, okay? So this is data from the US Center for Disease Control, but I stole the GIF from the Washington Post, okay? But here, and if you can Google this, and you can actually get the GIF as well. So this, I love this. This is like a nerd's, dream. It's like a 6D, graph. It's got time, it's got, BMI, it's got sex, it's got frequency, and it's got a histogram. We love it, okay? But what you see, so now BMI is imperfect. It is imperfect. But let's go with the numbers we know, okay, where between 20 and 25, you're normal body weight, right? And then between 25 and 30, you're overweight, and above 30, you're obese. Once again, imperfect. We can discuss this later, but let's go with that. Then you can see, let's go back to 1984. We can see that the average body weight of a male, okay, in 1984, or BMI, pardon me, was 22 to 23, so normal, okay, in 1984. Whereas in 2014, you can see that has risen to the overweight category of BMI of 27.
I mean, and that's why the fat acceptance movement hates the BMI chart, because there's been a very, very obvious increase of people's BMIs. So it started off where most people were in that normal weight range in 1984. But once we get to 2008, 2012, something like that, it just starts moving upwards. So the average weight becomes overweight to becoming obese. I mean, that's why they absolutely hate the BMI chart. But like you said, and I agree, it's not a perfect science. There are some misgivings with it. It's not perfect, but it's very good to just graph it like this and just watch as the BMI starts rising from a normal weight to being overweight, and more people, it's just getting fatter and bigger, and you could even see higher up in age more obese people. But it's very interesting to see that once you get past 50 years old, maybe that's a generational thing too, because obesity wasn't as prevalent back when, people who were 55 and 60 years old weren't they weren't eating the way that we're eating today, so they're used to eating a different way. But also, it's like there's virtually nobody past 50 years old who are obese. Women, there's a little more, but men, no. There's nothing on the graph past 50, just by looking at it, past 50 years old who are obese. So when we say there are no obese people in the freaking nursing home, right here, I mean, it just shows it that, even though it's becoming more obese as it gets older, it just stops at like 50. So there are probably a couple of reasons why that is, but one of them is that nobody is living past 50 as an obese person.
Now, between 84 and 2014, now I certainly, and I'm looking in the audience, I think, sadly, the vast majority of you were alive throughout the entire process, like me, okay? And we're here, and our genes haven't changed. We haven't suddenly evolved a second head, okay? When we're there. So it's correct that the reason why we're different sizes now is because of the change in environment, because our genes haven't changed. Okay, so that's true. But...
yeah, that's true. Our environment has changed. Our genes haven't changed. So that's what I was saying in the beginning of this video. Is it a choice? Yeah, a lot of it is a choice. What you eat, what you decide to eat. The environment has changed. So we are now in an environment where there's an abundance of sugar, there's an abundance of fast food, there's an abundance of calories. Our portion sizes got massive compared to how big they used to be. So our environment has changed, and so that has shifted the entire BMI chart from everybody, for most people, being a normal weight to maybe slightly overweight, to now the vast majority of us are overweight.
And here's the but. If it was all a response to just the environment with no biological input, then the histogram from 1984 should, in theory, shift in its entirety upwards so that you actually get a shape that kind of looks like the Golden Gate Bridge, okay? But that's not what you see. You don't see a shift in the entire curve. You see a change in the shape of the curve. Now, assuming that everyone in 1984, okay, is still alive now, okay, right? Then the only way there's a change in shape is if every data point in there, every human being in there, behaved differently when the environment changed from 1984 to now. So sure, why have we as a population, as a species, become heavier? Because of the change in environment, our life, our exercise, our jobs, the kind of food we're exposed to. Okay, the entire environment. But how obese we become, do we become overweight, do we gain any weight at all? That is powerfully biologically influenced and actually has a huge genetic role. And we understand this because in part, these are the Van Tulleken twins, for those of you who know them, in part from twin studies. Okay, so why study twins, you guys might actually ask. Well, as we all know, they're identical twins, and they share 100% of DNA material, so all the genes they share, right? And then you have fraternal twins, non-identical twins, and they would share as much genetic material as you would with your own siblings or, for that matter, your parents, 50%. So you could take any given human trait and ask the question, well, what happens when I share all my genes versus with a trait versus when you share 50%, and work out what we call heritability. Now, heritability is the percentage of a variation of a trait, which is down to your genes versus the environment. Okay, let me give you some examples. If I had hair, my hair would be black. And I want to argue that hair coloration is very powerfully genetically influenced with very little environmental impact. Bleach does not count, ladies, okay? Now let's look at another trait, freckles. Now, freckles are clearly also going to have a genetic influence, clearly. But whether or not you get freckles, how many freckles you get at all, is going to depend on whether or not you wear T-shirts. Do I like to stand in the sun? So there we have a genetically influenced trait with a powerful environmental impact. As it turns out, every single human behavior and human trait will have a genetic influence. Every single one. Even car accidents, okay?
So that's an interesting conversation. I know I keep saying that. This is interesting because this is all very interesting. I'm learning a lot of this for the first time, and I hope that you're still with me and you're still watching this. But yeah, there is that genetic component. Genetics plays a part in this because even though the environment changed, that environment impacts our genetics in a way. That's what he's saying. Like, yeah, there's been an environmental shift. Our behavior has changed. We are less, we're more sedentary. We're eating more calories. So that is true. But what that has done is it has an impact on our genetics. Just like you would pass down hair color, like all the men in my family have black hair. All right. My dad had black hair. My grandpa had black hair. The women in my family have brown hair. And in that same way, your family passes down certain genes. So if you are in an environment, so I get into an environment that, let's say my sister is in the same environment, she only had 50% of a certain amount of genes that were passed down. And so maybe there's something passed down from my mom, passed down to me that my sister didn't get. So we lived in the same environment. We both had the same coping mechanisms. We both had the same abuse. We both were around the same amount of food, but my genetics played a role in me eating that it didn't play in her. I guess that's what it's saying. So,
but the trick and the trickiness is what role does the environment play? Okay, so it's always the two together. There's always a genetic influence. And if you do that math, then what actually happens is you actually see that there is a 70% heritability of body weight. So it's not zero, by any means, and it's not 100% either. Just to give you some perspective, the heritability of height is 85%. Okay, so it's not as high as height, but none of us here would debate that height has a genetic influence. Okay, but it is certainly approaching that of height. And we now know, okay, of several hundred genes, and we'll come and actually talk about a few of them, which actually influences our behavior around food, and even whether or not we like certain foods or not, therefore influencing whether or not we might actually choose something. Genetics and feeding behavior, really? Okay, so more audience participation. Okay, so Peter is going to give me, where's Peter? There we go, is going to give me a hand here. I need 6 volunteers. It's terrible. I know it's a terrible thing. Who wants to you've just been volunteered. So who else wants to? I need 6 volunteers, ladies and gentlemen. Come on, guys, don't be shy. So that's 1, that's 2 over here, that's 2, 3, the lady, the 4, that's 4 ladies. I need 2. Are we doing? You're down out already. Would you want to participate as well? Okay, 5. I need a gentleman. Okay, you. There. Sorry. Sorry. Right. Okay, so stand in a row. So bear with me here, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so stand in a row over here. Now, I promise I am not going to poison anyone, and just to show people that I'm not going to poison anyone, I am also going to partake in this particular experiment, okay? So now, everyone listen. You're going to get a piece of paper. Don't do anything till I tell you, please. Okay, so what happens is when I tell you to, I want you to put this piece of paper on your tongue and tell me what you taste. This is designed for children. So hopefully this will work. Okay, everyone, 1, 2, 3, put it on your tongue. 1, 2, 3. You taste anything? Good, there was nothing on there. Okay, so this is otherwise known, scientists out there, as the control experiment, okay? So now we know what a piece of paper that doesn't have anything tastes like, okay? Now this is the experiment. Please don't put anything on your mouth. Don't mess up the two, because otherwise. So on this next piece of paper, I have randomly put some chemical flavoring. It's not poisonous, okay? And I want to, in exactly the same way, now exactly the same thing, there'll be something to taste now. I want you to put it on the tongue once I do the same thing, and then I want you to tell me, raise your hand if you taste anything, okay? What? Okay. Okay, 1, 2, 3. You want to taste anything?
Oh, yeah.
Ah. Okay, any? All right, good. Once again, I also lied. This is terrible. This is a terrible thing. So there are actually, there is, where's my pointer thing over here? Oh, there we go. So every one of you had the piece of chemical on there, and the chemical which I put on there is called phenylthiocarbamide. Okay? And phenylthiocarbamide is the bitterness that tends to be found in brassica. So for example, in Brussels sprouts, in broccoli, and whether or not you can taste it, okay, is down to this gene called the TAS2R38 gene. And there's one single base pair change in there, okay, which allows I tasted it, but just FYI, but I've done this so many times I now can expect the flavor, okay, where that makes some of you taste the bitterness and some of you not taste the bitterness. So the ones of you who can taste the bitterness are called super tasters, okay? Now, you are therefore more likely, but not deterministic, more likely to dislike Brussels sprouts. So you're going to tell me, I love my Brussels sprouts, okay? But what I'm saying is that on a population, you can see that half of you here, roughly speaking, could taste it, half of you could not, okay? Everyone, I'm not white Caucasian, but you guys are all white Caucasian, and we're sat here, and so therein lies a situation with just one simple thing, whether or not the likelihood of you liking Brussels sprouts is actually down to your genes. Thank you very much, guys.
And that's awesome. Like that's something that I didn't realize, that there are certain genes in our body that make certain foods taste a certain way. So again, you might not like Brussels sprouts, you might not like broccoli, and that's because you have this gene in you that makes you taste the bitterness of those. Me, myself, I don't necessarily taste bitterness when I eat those. I love roasted Brussels sprouts. I love broccoli. I eat them. I don't taste any bitterness when I eat them. So I'm more likely to eat those green vegetables than some of you who probably taste it and you taste that bitterness and you're like, this is gross. I don't want anything to do with that. So yeah, genes do play a part in what you can taste, what tastes good to you, and it's going to play a part in your environment and what you eat. So there's a lot of kids who refuse to eat vegetables. A lot of it might be because they have certain genes that make certain vegetables disgusting to them. Maybe you're somebody who doesn't like fruit because for some reason you have a gene that makes fruit not taste as good as it does to some people. And that same thing plays a role in desserts as well. And he's probably going to get more into it. I'm going to probably stop it right here. This is about 17 minutes in. So again, I'm going to break this up into several videos. But this is like phenomenal. This is stuff that I'm learning about weight and weight loss and genes and stuff like that and genetics. So let me know what you guys think down below here. And whether or not you agree with this. I mean, this is from an actual scientist talking about genetics and what we're learning about genetics. We're still uncoding our genetics and we're still learning about certain things about ourselves. So this is very, very cool. Like it's how our environment and our genes play a role and how it determines what we eat, what we don't eat, and how we're more or less susceptible to eating certain things. It might even come to play in whether or not we become addicted to sugar. I don't know. We're going to see what he says. But yeah, just let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, what you thought about this video and what you think genetics might play a role in obesity. All right, so I'll see you guys tomorrow and have a good one. I love you. Happy Memorial Day. God bless you.